back to She Births Podcast. Today's guest is Jana. Hi, Jana.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for wanting to interview me. I really appreciate it.
So, can you tell our listeners when you first realized you wanted to become an author?
Yes, I was very young in school. Uh, the first real writing was in fourth grade. There was a citywide contest called
Oh,
Thanksgiving Me, and I won the contest. So that was a one-page story, or really document, and that's what really I realized that I was a writer. So ever since then, I enjoyed writing. I started writing short stories, and um,
wow.
enjoyed writing for English classes. And my high school had a contest, well, booklet for all kinds of arts, and you submitted anonymously, so they didn't know who it was. But my short stories were picked, all four. So that was nice. So I've enjoyed writing most of my
Wow, that's amazing.
life.
Oh, wow. So, as a writer, do you have any kryptonite as a writer? Like something that distracts you from writing? Like, I don't know.
Oh, well, I guess you can say there are times that life gets in the way,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
whether it's you wanted to or not. And um, I think yes, I can probably recognize, but there are other times that it's beyond your control. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, as a writer, have you taken any risk that paid off? Like, have you done advertisement or taken a big leap in publishing your book or anything like that?
Um, well, I think that I did. I also, well, I was in the energy industry for years, and that's where I got the idea for my book.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so, um, in some respects, I write about it because, as I like to say, the the characters are names are changed to protect the guilty. so so in some respects it was a risk because if you're in the electric industry, or
Mhm.
people that I worked with could probably figure out who I had written about. But it, as far as a risk for publishing,
Mhm.
um, it that's probably the hardest part to get published.
Oh,
But in some respects, it's all sort of timing. Um, I wrote this book several years ago, and my husband then got ill, and that's what I was talking about. Life kind of got away. So I really finished it several years ago, and then um, later I decided to pick it back up and really started focusing on it in 18 2018, and I found an editor and worked with her, and started looking at a publisher right after that, and fortunate to find a really great women-owned publishing small boutique firm, and they wanted to publish my book, and they have a great marketing plan. So that really helped me get it launched, have it become a bestseller, continue to do well on Amazon and Kindle, and all the sites.
wow. Wow, that's amazing. So, what's the trickiest thing about writing the characters of the opposite gender? So,
Oh, that's a good question. um the trickiest, I guess, to make it sound like it really is the way a man would act or think, or
mhm,
how that,
yeah.
so to ensure that it really does sound like a man, or a male character.
Yeah, yeah, that's how what I always thought it was hard. Like when I read Stephen King books, I'm like, how does he write about the female gender? Like if he's a male, like I've always wondered that about authors in general. Like how do they write about the opposite sex? Like their character traits and how they like, I don't know, how they move and how they speak and stuff. Like, I'm like, I've always wondered that.
Well, that's a really good question. I think for me, since I did base in some respects different people that I work men that for the years, sort of a composite in a way that I would think about what they had said or how they said things or how they acted in certain situations. So that's probably how I created my male characters, was to think of the men who were, who I had seen them do and act and say certain things. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, I still can't hear you. I don't. I think everything's okay on my end, but you're muted, or I just can't hear what you're saying. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
there you are.
Okay. All right. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about your book. Can you hold it up and show us what your book looks like?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you. Is that a good?
Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. So, can you give our listeners like a brief summary of your book and what inspired it?
Oh, sure. Well, my book is a mystery thriller, a conspiracy theory that is about the electric industry, and I worked in the electric and energy industry for decades, and there is a true fact that power lines and substations emit electromagnetic fields, and there's
Huh.
been a controversy as to do they or can they create or cause cancer. So I took that fact and made it into a mystery thriller, and of that between the industry and the the citizens who are against it. And my heroine is finds out the truth and wants to make sure that he gets it out. Um, you know,
Wow.
save the day.
Wow. That kind of reminds me of I forgot what it's called. Aaron Brockovich. Kind of
Yes.
reminds me of that.
Yes, well, Aaron Brockovich, of course, was a true story, but yes, it is very similar in that respect. That it is a female, a strong character or protagonist,
Uh-huh.
and she, finds out that there is a cover up, and so she wants to make sure she can, get the truth out. And then there's some bad people that she has to deal with, and murders along the way,
Wow.
and so that she, does anything to uh,
Yeah. So, what was your hardest scene to write in that book?
the hardest. What did you say?
The hardest scene to write in that book.
Oh, the hardest scene. Let me think a second. I appreciate it. I would say the hardest scene was to write that my heroine has a sister, and I
Oh.
don't have a sister. I have one brother. I would say that I wanted to make sure the interaction between the two sisters was like as it could. So
Oh.
probably in a way the most difficult to make sure that it really sounded and came across as true.
Wow. Wow. So, is your book on audiobooks? Like, can we
Yes,
listen?
it's on Audible. Yes,
Oh, it is. I'm
uh,
gonna get
so,
that. Let's
and
get that.
I'll tell you a little bit when my publisher um, said that I would get to pick the voice for Audible. And they sent me three men's voices and three women. And even though my book is a heroine driven, I fan for voice because it just sounded really good. And when I listened to his voice, and then they sent me reading the first chapter, and that to me was just an unbelievable moment that my book had actually happened, that there was something that was truly, it almost sounded better reading it than it did. I mean, listening to it than it did to read it.
That's cool. That's cool. So where can we get purchase your book? I know audio book now, but can we go on Amazon and
Yeah,
all those?
Amazon and Audible and Kindle and Barnes and Noble.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. Yeah.
Oh,
So what do you hope your readers take away from your book?
oh, well, I hope that they will uh, realize it is a true, it is a true fact, and
Mhm.
be aware of how power lines
Yeah.
can truly affect your life.
Yeah.
And then also, I have a series planned with my heroine that will be other books in the energy about energy, since I worked in that area so long. So
Mhm.
hopefully they take away that it's a page turner, that
Mhm.
they really like heroine, and that they can't wait to read the next book.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a trilogy or is it gonna be a series?
I'm hoping for a series because I have right now I have at least three more books planned, and hopefully there'll be even more than that. I'm working
Ooh.
on the second one right now, so I'm also working on a screenplay, not all about energy, that is actually a young adult sports themed screenplay.
Wow, nice. I'm gonna keep up with you, keep up with you doing with what you're doing, and have you back on here again.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that very much.
So, can you tell our listeners the process for coming up with the cover?
Uh,
What was the
Yes,
inspiration for the cover?
actually, that was my idea. I
Oh.
uh, was no, I did not draw it, but I was able to work with the graphic artist for the publisher, and wanted I wanted to be that, since the book was called Power Lies, Lies, I wanted
Mhm.
to be the I'm trying to see if I can send it show the best way there. The
Yeah.
that it would be Power Line um, on the cover, and that the way they came up was like a in a spider web, and that it looked like an N for power line. So it was, and then also there's a story in there's a sub about boy, and I have him flying a kite, and that time that Ben Franklin, of course, had with electricity and flying a kite,
Mhm.
and one of the main parts of the book is that it's that the industry's main office is called the Ben Franklin Institute. So I wanted it to be like, although I'm older than you, but like the Twilight Zone in a sense, that it
Mhm.
was very, mystical looking, and not just a clear, in a
Mhm.
sense, sort of impressionist, but yet very, you know, dark and wanting to lure you in. When
Mhm.
they laid the power lines down.
Wow, I like the cover. I really
Oh,
did.
thank you
At
very
first, I thought it was a spider web. At first, I thought.
good. I'm glad that worked. So thank you.
So, what is the message like the plot of your next book of your series? Like, is it gonna follow the same lead character, or is it gonna go on a different character?
No, it's going to have the same heroine.
Mhm.
Will be. I'm actually looking at two. I'm trying to decide which is going to be second. So there one. It's all going to be about energy, and the next one, going to be tied in again with the power industry or electric industry, and then then it could all. Then the third one could be more about um, the grid, and somebody hacking the grid. So I'm working on different. I'm trying to say I'm researching several different avenues now to figure out which one would be the best to write second. So I've kind of got two ideas running through my head, and I will have some of the same characters from the first book that will carry over to the second book and third, but it not be every book, then read the first book, each book will be freestanding, but then if you read the others, then you will say, oh yeah, that character was in book 1, book 2, or something like that.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to read it. I
Oh,
can't wait. I'm excited.
well, thank you very much.
So, my last and final question, what advice would you give authors who want to start writing, like beginner authors? What advice would you give them?
Well, it may be a little trite, but it to really write down everything you think. One of the best classes I ever took was a communication class when I lived in Dallas. I live in Houston now.
Mhm.
You the professor said, and this is old school, but whatever works for each person. But basically, if you
Mhm.
have the story idea, get a notebook, write down every single thought you have about your story. Don't worry about, don't worry about, don't even worry. Get every
Mhm.
all your, ideas, and
Mhm.
start working through and say, oh, it should be really
Mhm.
chapter 3. And then that's helped me. I kept
Mhm.
and because I was time too.
Right.
And I never got
Mhm.
night and think of something and write it down.
Yeah, that's really great advice because starting a book is difficult. That's why I'm like, that's why all the interviews that I interviewed all the authors and I asked them questions, I'm like, how did they get started? Because my brain is everywhere. So, how do you start the very first paragraph? Like, that's how my brain works. It's all over the place.
Mine can be that way too sometimes. Well, I'll tell you, for me, when I had it just idea about um, the true fact that I
Mhm.
that I've always enjoyed mystery,
Mhm.
be nonfiction. So um, I was lucky in the sense that idea popped in my head, and then
Mhm.
I started doing research. Even though I worked in the field, but electromagnetic field, power lines, and what the concept was. That a lot of ideas and thoughts, and
Mhm.
then so say that um, you know, and this is something I learned in the class I took, that if you like a certain author,
Mhm.
read more than see how they laid things out. Did they
Mhm.
with in a sense or did they with the background of the character? And then that me because I like I'm hoping my book where he took true fact in fiction.
Mhm.
So I had read all the books, and then to see what he did, how how he laid, you know, story. So so in
Mhm.
that respect, I would say um, even time to write it down and see how you on it as far as you search it, or
Mhm.
is there some character already like, or do you want to have a heroine, or already know who your bad guy's going to be?
Mhm.
Just I think in some respects you start really um, even jotting down notes. Uh, you know,
Oh,
dominant.
right, right. That's really great advice. I want to thank you so much, Jana, for coming on my podcast today and chatting with me about your book.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really and good luck with your podcast. And I hope
Oh,
to
thank you. Thank you. You have a great day.
see you too.